Dean's Fish Room built his in a 100 square foot space, semi-automated. Corey McElroy built his in an open space with tubs, fully automated, and Lucas Brett built his in his basement, pretty much hands-on. So which one's best? If you're considering building a fish room, where do you start? In 1990, I started my first fish room in a garage. It was approximately 400 square feet with 60 tanks. It was in Simi Valley, California. I knew at that point that was something I wanted to do full time. I really focused on the discus. I ended up getting 60 tanks in there and bred most of the species at the time. That was still when the pigeon bloods had a lot of peppering going on and stuff like that, so I was trying to breed that out of it. There wasn't much information. There was nothing online obviously yet. It was 1990, and so we either got it from books or we got it from breeders or from club members. So online now, there's a lot of information out there, and not to say that it's good or bad, because it's all information. It's just a question of what you want to do with it. The key to successful breeding is hard work. So I did that for about 8 years. Fish room down and decided to revisit it one day. In 2002, I decided to move away from California and move to Utah. The business opportunities were just much better. In 2017, I built my own house. When I built the house, I kind of knew that I was going to start up a fish room again. I just didn't know to what capacity, if it was just going to be fun or if I was just going to have some tanks. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So what I did is I just took a space in the basement that was empty and I just put up some temporary walls, insulated the best I could. I just kind of wanted to see if it was something that I wanted to still do. And I built it up to about 20 tanks. I had carried 10 tanks with me around all those years, and it was not easy. But I knew that one day I wanted to get back into it. I just didn't know what level. I started breeding them again. Next thing you know, I had 20 tanks full of discus. I had about 3 or 4 pairs, and I was selling those discus and making some good money. Never did it for the money this time. I was just enjoying it, but I was making money at it. So I was like, okay, well maybe I can take this to another level. Now that's kind of what this video is about, is planning for that. What does it take to build a fish room? What do you want out of it? Is it going to be automated? Is it going to be as far as feeders and water changes? How are you going to do your water changes? What's the structure going to be like? Are you going to age your water or have it flowing right into the tanks? Lighting, how is the lighting going to be? Is it going to be per tank? Is it going to be the room? Now that's one thing I find with fish tanks, is I find that we use way too much light on fish tanks. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think that in the wild, fish do not have that much light on them all the time. So there are certain tanks where I do have lights on the tanks, and it's usually planted. And that's one thing, is I used to use just bare bottom, strictly 100% bare bottom. I've kind of gone into substrate and plants because I kind of enjoy it. Now I do have a few tanks that I just keep personally that I enjoy in my fish room. How am I going to filter the water? And I found sponge filters with a linear piston air pump. So I prefer not to ship fish anymore. It's just something that I personally have decided. The time it takes for keeping a fish room, running a business, doing YouTube, it's just something that I'm just not interested in doing anymore. So I have found a local store that does ship fish nationwide, and so I sell to them and they ship my fish. So that's just something personally I've decided, and that's another thing you got to think about. Is it something that you really want to do, is ship fish, because it is a headache. If you're at about 80% success, you're doing pretty well. Personally, when I buy fish from a breeder anywhere in the United States, I spend more on shipping because I want those fish shipped quickly. Personally, I just don't ship fish. It's just something I've decided not to do. I do sell locally. I used to sell privately, but I've stopped doing that because just the fact that people come into my house, it just was not comfortable for me or my family. So how did I build my fish room? Basically a ton of planning, and I didn't rush it. just was not in a hurry to build it. It took me about 2 months to build from start to finish. It officially started on January 1st of 2021. And as of today, I have made about $5,000 breeding fish out of there, which sounds good, but that's just the beginning. So I've kind of switched my fish room. It used to be all discus. I've switched it over to other fish. So I'm building my final fish room, my dream fish room, and no doubt you would think that I would automate everything. Well, I kind of went the total opposite. I have made everything hands-on. I have a business where I can be home, whenever I need to be. So for me, it's easier and more efficient as far as breeding, and more success as far as breeding if I can touch those tanks 3 to 4 times a day. Now that sounds extreme, but now I'm talking about fry. I'm talking about fish that are 2 or 3 days old. You need to be there to feed those fish. If you can't, then somebody has to be there. I don't care how much automation you put in. You need to see if there's issues, problems, water quality. What kind of foods are you feeding? You should be feeding, if they're old enough and big enough, they should be eating baby brine shrimp. I want fish to grow as quick as possible, but also as even as possible. I don't want to see any stunting. I don't want to see bloating. So that's why more small feedings is always better. And that's why I've kind of decided to do it this way. The hands-on approach for me just works better personally. But if I see an issue, first thing I do is change water and then put an air stone or some kind of aeration in there, and then I check parameters. I don't check parameters and then scramble. So that's just something I do personally from experience, and it always works for me. So automation, I think it's important if you're traveling a lot, if you have the necessity to not be able to be there every day, then yes, automate. And yes, there's sometimes where I just don't feel like it, but I know they're counting on me, and I know by not going down to the fish room that I might cause a problem and lose fry. And to me, it's like once you start committing to something, you need to follow through. And there's times when I just don't want to do it, but I do it because I've committed. And that's just something that I've psychologically said to myself, hey, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna go all in. If you're not, then let's just keep a 90-gallon discus tank in the living room, and we can change the water every couple of weeks and feed it once a day and call it a day. I can't pay my mortgage selling fish unless you go to a certain scale. Now, if I was going to go to that scale, I would probably do feeders, because that's where the money's at. I would do billions of feeders for 1 cent and make money doing that. But you would need the infrastructure to do that. So that's personally how I would make money in this business: selling discus, selling rams, selling apistos, selling Odessa barbs, plecos, L numbers, all that stuff. You're gonna make money, but I don't want to say it's break even, because that would be lying. I do make money doing it, but to make money to support my family, that's just not realistic. So that's just something that I've learned over 30 years of being in this hobby. And I call it a hobby, but I treat it like a business. And I call it a hobby because I want to enjoy it. That's why I do this. I have a business on the side that I do stuff and I make money, and I do real well at that. And that's something I do, and I'm very realistic that I need to keep doing that to support my family. If you think you're going to get into this and make money and buy a house and pay your car payments and insurance and food and diapers, it's not going to happen. It's just impossible, because you're relying on a live animal to do it, and anything can happen any day. I personally have lost entire rooms due to something in the water. So that's why I prefer personally to age well.